That's what makes you resilient. It's the unwillingness to accept the failure and the willingness to pick yourself up after you've been hit and drive on, right? Keep going.
I lost over $324,000 in 6 months trying to build an Amazon business. And I nearly lost everything. My marriage, my house, my kids, everything. But I bounced back. How did I do that? I get that question a lot. And that got me to thinking, how does anyone bounce back from failure? And can we develop a framework to cultivate resiliency so that you can bounce back, you can take feedback, and you can grow and be successful? And that's what this show is about. My name is Nick Agharkar, and we're going to delve into what happens after the fall. How do you get back up? And our guest today is an amazing man. I've known him for several years now. He's an executive. He's a coach, but he doesn't know it. And he's just an all-around wonderful human being. Steve Schiff, thank you so much for being on the show with me. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate that intro. That's probably more than I deserve, but thank you.
Oh, stop it. Steve, you're an executive at Nasdaq. You've had your own company before. Tell me, what was your biggest failure? What happened?
Wow. I mean, the thing is, it's funny. A lot of people look at failures in a lot of different ways. There's I lost a ton of money. There's, I lost my marriage. There's, all kinds of ways that people fail. But I don't know that I could point at any one and say, this is my biggest failure. What I can say is I have failed a lot, right? Frequently and often. And I think the thing that I would say is, I can point to one incident in particular where I was part of a startup, and this is early on in the days of early internet, and we were rebuilding a brokerage from scratch to basically be one of the first online brokers. Mm-hmm. And at the time, we were competing with E-Trade. We were encouraged to be very, very creative. A lot of new technologies were figuring in this. JavaScript was in its very early days. And we had this, we were all sort of Reuters, financial technology guys building market data terminals and all that. And we had this crazy idea that we were going to build a single display on which you could see your trading positions. You could have another frame that would show you the market, and then another frame that would let you bang a ticket to buy or sell a security. And it was really cool, and it was way ahead of its time. The problem was that at the time, most people only had like 28.8K modems. And so we were all testing.
For our younger listeners, that's kilobytes.
Yes, that's right. That's like you could practically watch, text scroll across the screen, right, as it was coming back to you. So, yeah. So anyway, we were testing this whole site, on local networking, which was obviously much faster. And our first early exposures and beta users were complaining of incredibly long load times, at which point we realized that we had gone way too far with the page sizes, in the name of getting much better functionality. So functionally, it was a great site, but it just wasn't fast enough. And this is like before this was the obvious thing to optimize for. Like all of this was really early days. So, we practically invented ways of making all the JavaScript smaller, which today there are utilities that just do that for you. We had to invent minifying the site. And did that. And then our backer, who was at the time was a National Discount Brokers, was willing to actually buy their high net worth folks 56K modems gratis so that they could get the advantage of the new site. And we built a cut down version of it. So the point is, now obviously when that happened, we were working like 24/7 practically to ship the new version. But the failure was like entirely mine because I architected the site. I argued for the use of JavaScript. I argued to make this, higher end site. It was all about leapfrogging where E-Trade was at the time. So I took a big risk on the new technology and the approach, and then had to, move heaven and earth to fix it after we had those early failures. Anyway, the point is, I've done that pretty much my whole career. Everything has always been about, it's worth stretching. It's worth taking the risk. It's worth going the extra mile. You may fail early. You may fail along the way, but what you've learned along the way is it's the real treasure, right? What you've learned, and what you've done and taught yourself to come back from it. So in the end, our customer was very happy. They had a lot of high net worth customers that were extremely happy with the new site. We delivered for the customers who still were on 28.8 modems. And it was an incredible learning experience. That was really my first foray into web development. And I moved on from there to run development for a startup that was in the enterprise information portal space, and had the credibility to do it because we had done that. So I guess, if I'm trying to tell this as how do you recover from failure and how do you have resiliency, it's in your attitude, right? I mean, I could have completely despaired. I could have, told our backers to fire us. I could have walked away from it. I could have done a lot of things. But you don't. You pick yourself up. You figure out how to move on. You figure out how to fix it. And to me, that's what makes a professional. That's what makes you resilient. It's the unwillingness to accept the failure and the willingness to pick yourself up after you've been hit and drive on, right? Keep going. And part of that is recognizing that it's what you learn along the way that is the most valuable thing. I forget who said this, but it's failure and success are effectively two sides of the same coin. Yeah, yeah. And so that's really I think my story is it's don't look at a failure and say that's a failure. Look at it as I've learned something, and keep moving, and eventually you will succeed.
So let's unpack this a little bit, because there had to have been some extremely tense conversations, maybe even some yelling and screaming when that site wouldn't work and it was Steve who recommended Java. How do you take it? How do you just absorb all of that and not mentally crumble? What is it about yourself or how your belief system is structured to say, I can overcome this? So, I understand the willpower, but then there has to be some sort of belief system there. Talk to me about that.
Well, full disclosure, I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force. And so I did go through basic training, and, you get screamed at a lot in basic training. I'll tell you a quick story from that if you want to hear it. It's kind of
that's what we're here for.
So my flight was one of the first flights that was put through training with a female TI, and so she was quite a character, and very interesting person. But anyway, one of the first things they do to everybody, a flight in the Air Force in basic training is basically a dormitory with 4 rows of 25 beds or racks. And so each bay is 25 airmen and for a total of 100 guys in basic training in the dorm. And the first thing they do to you is they go to each bay and they pick some poor unlucky soul and they say, hey, you're the bay chief. Everything that happens here is your responsibility. You're responsible for these 25 guys. Everything that happens here is on you. You're in charge. And that's it. And they just tell you that. And the first thing that happens to, all these young guys who are, in their early, their late teens or early 20s, the first thing that happens to this poor guy is that he screws up leadership in every conceivable way known to man, right? Ranging from being the raging asshole who's, all over everyone to trying to be everybody's best friend, and goes through all this. And then the first thing that happens after that is the TI comes through on an inspection and tears the leader apart, and then tears apart every single person who's in the bay as they go through inspection, and then proceeds to fire the leader, and then pick somebody else, and the cycle repeats. And what you learn is that the way that the military thinks of things is leadership is just another job. That everybody's going to screw up, and that the strength is always in the team, right? So when I went through this, and it was the first time I went through it, one of the things that I did in my inspection was I managed to fail my inspection with literally a demerit for every piece of clothing which was in my locker box because I had folded the wrong side over the other fold, right? So when the TI went through my Foot Locker, the first thing she said to me was, I'm going to count this as one demerit. And clearly, son, you seem to give a shit. And as long as you continue to give a shit, you and I will not have a problem. And I got the message loud and clear. For her, it was about intent. And the intent was to succeed. The work was put in. A simple mistake undid, my effort. And that's something I've carried forward always, and getting yelled at and all that. It's corrected, but recognize that most fair leaders are going to see what you were trying to achieve, and they're going to judge your intention or attempt to judge your intention and not purely judge the outcome. And so I've tried very hard to be that kind of leader with the people that work for me. To be someone who looks at how people are trying to do things and what their spirit is. I can't stand a lazy or sloppy error where the thinking and the effort wasn't there, right? I can't abide. But I have all the time in the world for someone who was doing their absolute best and putting on as much, really putting on their thinking cap, putting all their heart on their putting their heart into it. And failing for a simple mistake or an error or a misjudgment, it's a very different thing. So anyway, that I think a lot of that resilience, that we talk about was formative for me in those years. There are a lot of lessons I picked up along the way in the military, ranging from don't be intimidated when someone screams in your face and hits you with the brim of their hat, to recognizing that the effort you're putting in with your team and relying on that really carries you through.
So, Steve, I think you said two really important points there, very discrete points, our sort of never-ending quest to build a framework of resiliency. And I think the first is set an intention for success. If you always intend to succeed and that is your intention and you truly believe that in your heart, you can't fail, right? And you won't be set back by these minor setbacks because your intent remains. And then I think the other really discrete point that you mentioned there is you show up. Show up with your full self. Show up really delivering and working hard. Ultimately, that will necessarily lead to resiliency because there you can't fail, right? If you set that intention and you continually show up, you can't fail. Now, Steve, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you're a coach and you don't know it. Tell us a little bit about you, what you do. I know we're almost halfway through the show. This is how you do it. We want to hear about sort of your background and what you do now.
So I manage a development team at Nasdaq, working with the index and data teams. And these days, most of the folks that I lead are leaders. So there's a lot of coaching involved in that. It's teaching them how to be better leaders, teaching them how to drive success across their teams, how to do a lot of the things that aren't immediately intuitive, right? There are ways you can demotivate a team pretty quickly, and there are ways that you can get a team aligned. Really, and everybody has a different style ultimately. So, for a long time as a coach, I tried to, I went down my mistakes were things like trying to turn everyone into a leader, cut in my image, right? Which doesn't really work, right? Because everyone's different. Leaders have different styles. People have to find the one that works for them. But there are certain universals and certain things that, you can fall back on. I've had people who need their edges softened, and I've also had people who need their edges roughened a little bit. So there's a lot of, and everything, and everything in between, in terms of, there are people who are very good at managing all the details. There are people that can't manage details at all, right? And there are situations for those types of people. And, so I guess the point I would make is you become a very good observer of human character as a function of leading and teaching other people to lead. And it really is about helping them find their style, their strength, and their best use and their best position for that kind of thing. Not everyone is a change manager, right? Not everyone can lead a group and be called what's a lot of management a lot of organizations would call a pair of safe hands, right? He's not going to change the world, but he's a pair of safe hands. Actually, there are a lot of places that need managers who are a pair of safe hands, right?
Yeah.
To run an organization. A lot of organizations like that. Managing change is very, very difficult. You have to be ready to take all the slings and arrows of everyone around you, including people who work for you, and deal with that and drive forward anyway. Not everyone loves that. It happens to be the thing that I love the most. But because I have a thick skin and I can deal with a lot of that, but not everyone wants to do that, right? So
go ahead.
That's anyway. The point I was going to make is it really is about I hate to say parenting because then it implies that you look at the people who work for you as children,
right. But
it really is about that kind of care. About caring about another human being and helping them find their way. That's the point I would make. There is no simple way to take someone and make them a better leader. It really is about helping them find their own path.
So I'd love to unpack something you just said, which is some people need to be a little rougher around the edges, right? Mm-hmm. And I've heard this phrase, and it kind of lives with me, that you can be kind but not nice. Right. Because sometimes being nice is not a kindness to the other person. Right. I'd love to hear your take on that. And how do you get someone to be a little bit rougher? Right. Because that's a kind of a hard skill. If you're more of a soft person, you don't like conflict.
Right. Well, I mean, a lot of it comes down to learning. I'll give you a good example. There's a development manager that works for me who shall remain nameless, of course, who's probably the nicest guy you've ever met in your life. He's a kind, genuinely sweet human being. And, it can be difficult sometimes. And you have product managers who are saying to you, well, why can't you just do this? Why can't this be done quickly? Why can't, and often there are defensible, and it's important that you defend them, reasons to stand up and say, no, we have to do it this other way. And to try, and when you try to be too accommodating, sometimes you make compromises that, frankly, are not good compromises to make, particularly when you're trying to be a good steward of the technology. So, a lot of it comes down to having the confidence to know that you can stand up for that and to stand up and say, no, we have to do this and with your reasons why, and to do it dispassionately. I think one of the problems, he had was not figuring out how to do this in a way that was, even, that implied that, no, this is what it is, and there are lines I won't cross. Some of that, I think some of how I helped him was letting him know that I would be in his corner and he could make these decisions safely. And, even if he got it wrong, there's no judgment. We would talk about it and work through it. So a lot of that is, that's a big part of what a good mentor and a good manager brings to you. It's having the confidence to do what you think is right. That's I think how I helped him. But
I think that's how you help me. That's how you help a lot of people, Steve. So, the final question we ask every guest. So we talked a lot today about sort of resiliency, about mindset, about coming back. But to you, when you hear the word resiliency, what does that mean to you?
it's coming back from a fall to me. Resiliency is, it's not getting hit. It's not always winning. It's that coming back again and again and again and again, right? It's that don't give up spirit. It doesn't mean you're not going to fail. It doesn't mean that you're perfectly bulletproof. You're not Superman, right? It's that quality of, getting knocked down and never giving up.
The fearlessness of success. I love it. Thank you so much, Steve Schiff, coach of coaches, leader of leaders, developer of all things index. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today. Everybody, take care. This has been the Resiliency Project podcast.